What's going on, guys? We're back. You may have heard already, especially if you follow me on Instagram, because I made a video about it. If you don't, link is in the description. Make sure you do. Um, Iran attack. No, Ukraine attacked Iran. Yes, it's going to get into the specifics here, so I won't get too much into it. So before we do jump into it, please check out Cappy Army's channel. This is we react to a lot of Cappy stuff because it's very, very good quality. So please show love on his page. Also, like, share, and subscribe on this page right here. We're trying to hit 50,000 subs, man. We're on our way. We're on our way, and we're getting there. We've got a lot of new subscribers here, so welcome everybody. We've got another day or two of our exclusive monthly t-shirts on the merch site, Flamingos Over Moscow and the American for Ukraine. And all of our uncensored content, massive archive of uncensored media is in the description for our paid members. This is in Discord, but Discord link's in the description. All right, guys. Of course, I'll tag Cappy's channel in the title and description as always. Let's go.
Ukrainian attack drone slammed into an Iranian ship in the A long-range Ukrainian attack drone slammed into an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea, a clear sign that the war in Ukraine is now colliding with the war in Iran. This matters because the Caspian has slowly become this kind of weapons superhighway connecting Russia's war in Europe with the war in Iran in the Middle East. Ukraine is now trying to cut that artery before more munitions move through it. Today, we'll uncover exactly what weapons are moving through here, how Ukraine managed to reach it, and why the next strikes here could expand both wars, affecting Ukrainian cities, Gulf states, and American forces in the region. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. Hit the like button to get 3 military rundowns each week. Ukraine's President Zelensky says that the ship was evading sanctions by transporting military cargo between Russia and Iran. This includes components for killer attack drones and ballistic missiles. The explosion killed one Iranian sailor and wounded another. So in a rare display of international cooperation, Iran and Russia have successfully turned two separate wars into one. Iran's foreign minister condemned the attack as a hostile and criminal act. They summoned Ukraine's top diplomat in Tehran and warned that it cannot go unanswered. Iranian media went even further, openly discussing ballistic missile strikes against Ukraine. Zelensky's response was that Iran has already long been in this war by supplying Russia. He then stated that his country had proof that Russian satellites had been surveying American bases in the Gulf and then passing that intelligence to Iran. The Caspian Sea was previously a kind of protected back corridor between sanctioned regimes. It was a landlocked sea where no Western forces could really interdict or reach. Ukraine is now hunting the supply chain that attacks their cities by hitting the ships that are carrying the components before they even reach their destination.
I've gotten some questions about people asking like, um, especially in the past, even like upwards of, well, probably roughly about a year ago, but people would ask me my perspective on the relationship between Iran and Russia. And we've known since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022 that Iran's been shipping these drones over to Russia. And these drones are responsible for thousands of Ukrainian civilian deaths, not even talking about the military deaths. So I've always kept a very close pulse on what happens in Iran because I know the relationship and I know they're both bad actor governments. I do believe there's good Russians in Russia and there's good Iranians in Iran, but their governments and their regimes that are controlling their countries are evil and they're working hand in hand. So this is really interesting to see it. When this first popped up, where I saw Ukraine hit one of the Iranian cargo ships, I was stoked because Ukraine's known this for a long time, but hasn't necessarily had the capability with their drone systems or missile systems to hit these um, shipments. Now they do.
And so Ukraine and Israel have begun striking at the corridor itself, because this has been slowly escalating in the background of these wars, where it's now reaching a boiling point.
But before we get into that, half the year is over already, and if your credit still needs work, the time is now. Kickoff makes building credit simple and affordable, and I always tell my friends that good credit opens a lot of doors. Thankfully, getting started with Kickoff takes just a few minutes right from your phone. It's just $1 for the first month, and there's no credit check, no hidden fees, and no interest. Users with credit under 600 grow an average of 86 points just by paying on time. So start moving your credit in the right direction. Join over 1 million users already building their credit with Kickoff. With hundreds of thousands of positive reviews, there's a reason why Kickoff is the #1 credit builder on the App Store. Start building credit with Kickoff today and get your first month for as little as $1. That's 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/Cappy today, and you must sign up through that getkickoff.com/Cappy to activate the offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only, subject to approval. Offer subject to change. Average first year credit score impact of 86 points between August 2024 and August 2025. For Kickoff credit account users who started with a score below 600, who paid on time, and who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during the period. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score, and individual results may vary.
In November 2024, Ukrainian drones hit the Russian port in Dagestan, reportedly damaging
Dagestan.
2 missile ships. Then it escalated again in April 2026 when Ukrainian forces struck 2 offshore drilling platforms in the northern Caspian Sea. They targeted facilities that are vital links in supplying fuel to the Russian occupation army. Israeli fighter jets then attacked Iran's Caspian port infrastructure in March 2026, disabling all these naval assets in Bandar Anzal. The attack severely disrupted the logistics corridor linking Russian ports to Iran. It forced both countries onto riskier overland alternatives like through Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. Russia and Iran might have to now invest heavily in a multi-layered air defense system that covers the Caspian Sea. They're going to have to pull air assets off the front line and move it to protect this critical waterway. There's a reason why there's so many strikes here, I think. It's incredibly important to Russia and Iran's war efforts. These strikes show that the corridor is becoming a center of gravity in this expanding war that's now linking 2 continents, Europe and Asia. What we're seeing here is the 2 countries most harmed by the Russian-Iran partnership are prepared to reach deep into once protected space. The war in Ukraine and the war in Iran are parts of an emerging Eurasian conflict system, which sounds a little bit like extra words for World War III. The way this happened is the Caspian Sea is the world's largest inland body of water.
About a year ago, if not a little bit over a year ago, I made the statement and I made a video that I believe we're living the beginning stages of World War III. You know, when World War II started, or it was World War I or World War II, it wasn't ever called the World War during that time. It was called the World War I or World War II after the wars. But during the time, there were just different conflicts that all kind of merged into one. Almost exactly what's happening right now. Obviously, for different circumstances during those times, but we see. You get it. I won't go too into that, but he'll probably explain.
Water. It sits on the border of Europe and Asia, and it's larger in surface area than the entire country of Japan. Yet it has no connection to any ocean. So it's often classified as both a sea and a lake, because apparently even geography here refuses to take a clear position. But it's bordered by Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and Iran.
Turkmenistan? What the hell is that?
So the Caspian Sea is known for its oil reserves, fishing, and its position as this kind of transit point between the continents of Europe and Asia. For most of modern history, the Caspian Sea was a place of regional commerce and occasional border disputes. That changed when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since that moment, the Caspian has been transformed into one of the most consequential bodies of water on the entire Earth. And one of the big problems here is that the Caspian Sea has been just a big geopolitical blind spot for the US State Department. There's no big CIA station desk on the Caspian Sea. It's been irrelevant until now. Both Russia and Iran are heavily sanctioned states cut off from Western financial systems. These 2 countries are cut off from the global supply chains and shipping routes that they would normally use. The Caspian Sea has since served as a key corridor between the 2 sanctioned allies. Once Russian military cargo reaches Iran, it moves by rail or road toward the Persian Gulf and then attacks Hormuz. What travels along it has ranged from sanctioned oil and industrial goods to drone components, missiles, and ammunition. It's become a very active weapons pipeline. Russia's entire drone industry is largely thanks to the Caspian Sea. When Russia first established their long-range drone attack program, it was with the help of Iran's advisors. And according to a C4AD and US Treasury research report, beginning in late 2022, Iran provided Russia's Alabuga manufacturing facility with the Shahed 136 blueprints and the source code. The production equipment and technical training to mass produce them was also supplied, and disassembled drone kits, engines, electronics, all the components needed. Iranian specialists gave them access to their drone facilities, and all of it was moved across this waterway in the Caspian. The plan was to move from assembling Iranian kits to manufacturing roughly 90% of the Russian-made ones domestically, and their initial target was for 6,000 attack drones per year. Some equipment reportedly traveled in 50 shipping containers across the Caspian Sea, and that's how it got there. So Russia later localized and modified the design substantially. In return, Russia has given Iran the missing piece that they need by upgrading their Shahed drones that use satellite navigation now. So it's a two-way street. The Wall Street Journal got access to weapons contracts that showed the details of Iran's defense ministry and Russia's shipping artillery shells across the Caspian Sea. For over 3 years now, Iran has shipped more than 300,000 artillery shells to Russia for use against Ukraine through this waterway. Iran has little use for artillery shells right now, so it's easy for them to make that trade. And it didn't stop there. Russia used Caspian-based warships to fire their cruise missiles directly at targets in Ukraine. So Putin actually fired missiles from here against Syria too, which is really weird to think about, firing missiles at both Syria and Ukraine from this same sea. But that kind of illustrates these two places that seem far apart are connected by this waterway by proximity. The Caspian Sea is an active launch platform against Ukrainian civilian and military infrastructure, and it extends the reach of the Caspian flotilla into the heart of the conflict. Very recently, Ukraine really had no recourse, and they were unable to fire long-range drones to accurately hit here. But with the emergence of their long-range strike program, that calculation has quickly changed. The Caspian Sea has become a frontline concern in two simultaneous wars: Russia's invasion of Ukraine and a broader conflict involving Iran in the Middle East. It's where these wars are colliding and meshing together. And all those times that you hear about people say wars are spilling over, or there's risk of local war turning into a regional one, this is what they're talking about. And part of the reason for this has to do with the legality of here. So legally, according to the 2018 Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea, signed by all 5 bordering nations, it prohibits the deployment of any kind of armed forces from any third-party country within its waters. So moving weapons and supplies across international waters is much easier than getting them through land, for instance. Normally, you'd have to ask permission from everyone, from Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and say, hey, is it cool if we transport weapons through your territory? Classic Civilization 5 stuff. But Iran and Russia don't need to get permissions from any countries. They can just move their weapons through these open waters because it's like a anything goes for weapons logistics. It's a free-for-all. And so it's this combination of geography, legality, and the shared desperation of two heavily sanctioned states that has transformed the Caspian into a strategic artery. Russia and Iran, both cut off from Western financial systems and global supply chains, have turned to each other across this inland sea to sustain their respective war effort.
It's exactly what I was just going to mention is the isolation of these bad acting countries, Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, forces them to collaborate and become even closer with each other because they need to out of necessity, because they can't get these certain supplies, equipment, whatever it is, via the rest of the free world. So this is just, again, put another, mark off another box on the bingo card of World War III. Yeah.
Caspian Sea is the centerpiece of a wider Eurasian economic realignment driven by the wars in Ukraine and Iran. The sea hosts major oil and gas fields and critical ports that connect Central Asia to global markets. It's estimated to hold the world's largest reservoir of oil and natural gas after the Persian Gulf and Russia itself. I hear largest supply of oil. Not sure how the Pentagon hasn't heard of this place yet, but China views the Caspian Sea as a key corridor for energy supplies and its Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically an economic strategy that uses infrastructure and connectivity to expand Beijing's influence. If the
Wow.
risk and liability to doing business here increases from these wars, it's going to put a major thorn in the side of Xi Jinping because it links mainland China to Europe. The result is that the sea is simultaneously a weapons corridor for two sanctioned powers, and this major artery running directly through this space is the International North-South Transport Corridor, or the INSTC. It's a 7,200-kilometer long multimodal network of ships, rails, and road routes connecting Russia to Iran and onward to India and the Indian Ocean. Originally signed in 2000 through an agreement between Iran, Russia, and India, the project then faced 2 decades of delays due to sanctions and lack
What is that? Just a dry riverbed?
of investment. The war in Ukraine, though, has changed that. After 20 years of delays, the project finally found its purpose, helping two sanctioned governments avoid the people who sanctioned them. Suddenly isolated from Western markets, Moscow prioritized the corridor as a kind of strategic lifeline, and Tehran, equally isolated, embraced it as a route to economic survival. In 2025, cargo flows along the north-south corridor here exceeded 8 million tons, for the first 9 months alone. The container traffic nearly doubled along some branches. For both countries, the INSTC is a sanction-proof architecture. It's designed to outlast Western economic pressure. Since the invasion of Ukraine, the Caspian has also functioned as a refuge for Russian naval assets that were displaced from the Black Sea, where they were crushed there. The Black Sea
But how do they get in there? How do they move from one to the other if they're landlocked?
fleet increasingly under threat from Ukrainian drones and missiles, so elements of Russia's naval force have redeployed away from the contested Black Sea toward the Caspian through inland waterways. So the Caspian Sea is not naturally connected to the Black Sea, but they're linked by human-made waterways like the
Okay.
Volga-Don Canal and the Unified Deep Water System. So the mechanics of this weapons pipeline have been deliberately obscured. But intelligence groups report on vessels from Russia's so-called shadow fleet that's operating along the corridor under Iranian and Russian flags. They're linked to the smuggling of sanctioned oil, drone components, and military cargo. Many of these vessels routinely switch off their tracking signals, making it difficult to monitor what they're carrying or exactly where they're going. In 2024, the United States sanctioned 2 Russian shipping companies that were transporting drone-related attack equipment and munitions across the Caspian Sea that were being used in the war in Ukraine. However, Ukraine has not been passive in their response. The Ukrainian military announced that it had sunk a vessel at the port of Olia that's said to be transporting components for these Shahed drones from Iran. And they describe it as a port that's a hub for importing military supplies and aiding Moscow's war effort.
The most ironic thing about all of this to me is the fact that Donald Trump and the U.S. administration have been um, asking more or less, right, or insinuating that they want help from European allies with the US's war in Iran. And European allies are like, no, hands off. And some wouldn't even let US aircraft land on their military bases. So Europe's like, no, no, we don't want any part. NATO allies, United States' NATO allies are saying, no, no, we don't want any part of it. But the one country that has refused entry to NATO, which is Ukraine, is the one that's helping the US. Whether it's directly or indirectly, it becomes directly, right? Or whether it's for the same interests or not, right? Ukraine's attacking Iran to weaken Russia, but in turn, it's also weakening Iran. So it's just that's so ironic to me. It's like they've been refusing Ukraine access for years, and Ukraine's like, that's fine. I'll just do it. I'll just help the U.S. while the rest of NATO sits on their ass.
Actions like these only reinforce the idea that the Caspian corridor carries far more military equipment than previously assessed. The flow of military technology has since reversed direction, with significant consequences. Russia is now shipping drone components back to Iran via the Caspian, helping Iran rebuild its offensive capabilities. after losing a estimated 60 to 80% of their drone arsenal during recent fighting. The components originate in Tardistan, where Russia manufactures its
Tardistan.
own version of the Shahed, and from there the cargo travels by river barge, down the Volga, and then across the Caspian, through roughly 700 kilometers of open water that remains entirely beyond most Western interdiction. Ukraine's attacks on Iranian ships shows another level of cooperation between America and Ukraine. American officials requested Ukraine's help in defending against Iranian drone attacks, and President Zelensky confirmed that Ukraine would send military experts to the Gulf region, with requests coming from 11 countries to help them with defending against those drones. And the logic is that the drones that Ukraine has spent years learning to intercept over Kyiv are the same weapons now being fired at
Right.
Gulf states and American military assets. Ukrainian expertise that was hard-won over thousands of drone intercepts and years on the front line, and all of their adaptations, has become some of the most operationally relevant knowledge available to U.S. war planners in the Middle Eastern theater. So Ukraine's involvement in the Iran conflict is a direct consequence of the Caspian corridor and the weapons loop that it enabled. Despite all this, the Caspian remains poorly understood. Lou Coffey, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, said that for American policymakers, the Caspian is a geopolitical black hole. It's almost like it doesn't exist. He noted that the State Department, there's 3 separate bureaus covering the 5 Caspian nations, and the sea falls along fault lines between different U.S. military commands. That institutional fragmentation has consequences. It's produced a genuine strategic blind spot at a moment when the corridor is becoming actively shaping the course of 2 wars simultaneously. The Caspian faces an uncertain future. Its north-south Russian-Iran military axis is increasingly contested by their adversaries, while its east-west trade and energy role holds the potential to rebalance all of these different regional dynamics that make my average infantryman head explode. The tension between the Caspian as this theater of confrontation and the Caspian as a corridor of trade, it'll be shaped by decisions made in Washington, in Kyiv, in Tehran over the coming years. The war in Ukraine and the war in Iran have exposed the Caspian Sea as this load-bearing element of the Eurasian conflict. That means that understanding it right now is extremely important. Building policy around it and closing any kind of knowledge gaps that we have are urgent tasks. A body of water long dismissed as irrelevant has become more and more consequential, and one of the most important spaces in modern geopolitics. And the question here is, what is the West's Caspian strategy? I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one here about what's left of Iran's military.
So great video. Again, check out Cappy, please. He does so good with this stuff, man. I had somebody ask me yesterday, they were like, well, what happens if Iran starts attacking Ukraine? And I'm like, and what if? Ukraine has become very efficient with their air defense systems. Last night alone, there were 85 Shahed drones launched into Ukrainian airspace. 75 were taken out. So what's Iran going to do? Add 3 more drones? They need to use their stuff to try to fight off the most powerful military in the world, the United States. They're not just going to lob a couple drones over into Ukraine that's just going to go shoot them out of the sky with all of their interceptors and anti-air that they've been learning how to perfect over the last 5 years. So I don't know, man. It's interesting, but I do think I've never been a prepper, right? A doomsday prepper. But right now in the back of my head, I'm like, it would be a good time if for these preppers right now. I bet they're thinking in their heads, they're like, I knew it. It's coming. I knew it, because things are looking crazy right now, man. I've never seen anything like this as far as the tension, the global tension. And now that these massive confrontations, these massive wars, the war in Russia and Ukraine and the war with the US and Iran are starting to link. Oh boy, we're in for some spiciness in the coming months, man. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. You think this is going to escalate? You think somehow they're going to calm everything down? What do you guys think? I love you. We'll see you in the next video.